Story 1. Went out on bike rides all the time. Doing that with your friends was a peak experience. Never forget. Story 2. I made mixtapes from music playing on the radio and played pinball on my computer. Story 3. Back then, life was all about being outside. We rode bikes everywhere, played, and hung out with friends. Sure, we had video games and cable television, but my parents would make us sit halfway across the room because they thought the television gave off radiation. If you wanted to see a friend, you would call their house, and if no one answered, you would just walk over and knock on the door. Those were simpler times. Story 4. My sister and I went outside and used our imaginations. Story 5. Built forts in the woods. Spent time improving the forts. Defended forts from rival builders. If it rained after school, we played video games. We read a lot before bed because television was not allowed past a certain time in my house. As a result, I grew up to be a librarian, but only because the job market for fort builders is pretty weak. Story 6. I was never bored. I was almost always outside, doing something or going somewhere. Story 7. Read, listen to music, went to the library or the mall, called a friend, and talked. Story 8. Read, played with my brother and friends, rode our bikes, played board games and card games. I was never bored. I was born in 1964, so being outside was a regular activity. Story 9. I am much more bored now because I spend all my time doom scrolling. Story 10. Using the toilet for defecation is a relatively recent practice that was not common before 2011. Prior to that, if you needed to go, you would bring a book with you. Story 11. All the things you use your phone to arrange, except endless scrolling. Put your phone down and try new activities. Story 12. Read books, newspapers, and magazines. Play video games. Watch television. Spend time with friends. Story 13. Read, play video games, watch VHS movies, channel surf. As a kid growing up in the 1990s, I have many memories of playing my Game Boy or Super Nintendo Entertainment System on snow days, often while reruns of old television shows played in the background. I used to carry books around at school to read after I finished assignments. I loved going to the library and researching personal computers which we could not afford, and checking out books on ecology, cooking, and cars. My mom never felt bad about spending money on books for us. We had books like My Teacher is an Alien, Scary Story anthologies, and all the Goosebumps books, which was what my brother would read. Story 14. Always playing outdoors with friends. We do not go home until it is dark. Story 15. Draw, read comics, listen to music, have fun with a tape recorder. Story 16. Listen to music, read magazines, talk to friends on the phone, and watch television. Story 17. Walked around in the forest, went fishing, built things, explored old places, played games, and when all else failed, used a stick to hit gravel from the driveway into the field across the road. Mad fun. Would not trade it for anything. Story 18. I do not remember ever really being bored. I had house chores, books, a swing set, crafts, cartoons, and an imagination. Story 19. Climbed trees, played in the woods, built forts, daydreamed. Story 20. We went outside and rode our bicycles around until another bored person showed up. We then went on adventures. Story 21. This might come as a surprise to you, but we did have television, movies, video games, compact discs, and books. Oh, and some of us even went outside. Story 22. I grew up in a brief moment when technology was beginning to boom, but smartphones were not yet common. I'll describe my experience from about 8 to 11 years old. Internet on phones had been created, but it was almost useless. You could barely do anything, and they charged you an extortionate amount. Wealthy business people used it to get their emails on their BlackBerry devices, but that was it. Most people did have a mobile phone, but most were pay-as-you-go. I was given a clamshell phone at 10 years old for emergencies only. I had it when I left the house and gave it back when I got home. It had enough credit to call my mom or my granddad. I had a PlayStation 2 not for online gaming but gaming all the same. For online access, I used MSN Messenger, could access forums, and YouTube. During part of this time, I had dial-up internet, so it was quite slow. YouTube was in its early Flash animation days, but it kept me entertained. My sister and I had Game Boys, then we got Nintendo DS devices, and at around 13 we got a Nintendo Wii. Since gaming was mostly offline, there was sometimes a need for human interaction. I would jump on my bike, text my friends, and whoever wasn't grounded would meet at the edge of the woods. What did we do? Not much. I had a Walkman and speakers that plugged into the headphone jack so we might listen to music. We rode our bikes. Sometimes we found coins in the street, which we used to buy penny sweets from the local shop. The shopkeeper was a kind Hindu man who looked after us because we were respectful. He would sneak extra treats into our bags and even brought us ice poles on hot days. Sometimes Mum would give us money for chips, and we would run to the chippy, get our food, and scurry to the park to eat with ketchup. We built forts in the woods from sticks and leaves, learned tricks on our bikes, and raced each other. Sometimes we rode to the next neighborhood to meet school friends. We played football on the school field and a game called Kirby, where you threw a football at the curb on the opposite side of the road, trying to bounce it back. Later, they built tennis courts in a park near town. Our parents let us go there and bought us rackets and balls. We took snacks and drinks, played tennis, and on the way back tried to set off the speed camera with our bikes without success. Afterwards, we would go home and watch TV with Mum. My sister and I were both into art and drawing, read books, and played board games. We also got interested in games like Dungeons and Dragons. We had water fights with balloons and super soakers. Then Nerf guns were invented. We had neighborhood wars involving many local kids. Some of us had instruments and would play together, forming makeshift bands, though not very good. My sister and I were lucky to spend a lot of time with our grandparents. Nan taught us gardening and cooking. Granddad taught us basic car maintenance, carpentry, bricklaying, and other practical skills. They took us on days out to see castles, go fishing, drive to the coast, wander shops, buy sweets, and play arcade machines. In summer, we lounged in fields making daisy chains and watching clouds. It was too hot to run or race on bikes. My best friend had a trampoline and I had a small pool. We would play at each other's houses. She kept chickens, so I spent a lot of time there. Her siblings were close in age to my sister, so we all spent much time together. In summary, I was never truly bored. But when you were bored, you just were. I genuinely think I am more bored now as an adult with a smartphone than I was as a child without one. Thank you for the little trip down memory lane. Writing it put a smile on my face. I hope it brings a smile to someone else. Reminiscing about simpler times. Story 23. One Pump Air Pellet Gun Wars. They were all fun and games until someone pumped the gun more than once and lodged a pellet in your shin. Story 24. Being bored is actually pretty fun if you can take it long enough. Try it if you dare. Story 25. We built forts indoors and outdoors. It did not matter. Think about the creativity and problem-solving involved in building something from nothing. We were not bored, we were engaged. Story 26. Book. Lots of books. Rode my bike, played hide and seek, swam in my pool, hung out with my friends, played board games, wrote in my diary, played games on my Merlin, played card games, listened to music, recorded music off the radio, and made mixtapes, swam in lakes. The list goes on. Story 27. I remember sitting on the floor of my room on a Sunday afternoon playing solitaire with cards. Story 28. I complained to my mother about being bored. She said, "Boredom is a state of mind." It did not help. Story 29. Depends, maybe read comics, watch television, go out and play ball. There is a lot to do. Story 30. I flipped through the television channels to find something that would hold my attention, or I read. Story 31. As a 1990s kid, we played outside all day. Basketball, soccer, kickball, street hockey, water guns, tag, you name it. Then at night, we all came back and played ghosts in the graveyard or hide and seek. The last part was summer activities. But that's basically it. We were very active. We also played video games. Super Nintendo and Sega systems were popular, and when Nintendo 64 and PlayStation came out, gaming really ramped up. However, it was a lot of sports for me and my friends. Story 32. I played a lot of Lego. I built spaceships, bases, and mechanical warriors with my bionicle pieces. I would play a CD in the boombox until dinner was ready. Story 33. I was never bored. In quiet times, I would read. I loved reading. Story 34. Read. Watched television. Played board games. Played sports. Went outside and touched grass. Story 35. Played with friends, read books, biked a lot, built an actual treehouse, climbed trees, went swimming, learned how to cook with the grandmothers, learned how to hunt with grandfather. Story 36. Football. Baseball. Basketball. BB gun battles in the woods. Reading. Rode bikes. Drove around to see who we could find. Climbed trees. Crawled through sewer pipes. Story 37. I used to draw and create imaginary games with my cousin. Now, I play Dungeons and Dragons as if it were my religion. Story 38. Rode my bicycle to find the house with other bicycles out front. Or rode my bicycle to find friends who were hanging out. Story 39. 1990s and very early 2000s. Watched movies, played video games with my sister, went on bike rides, helped my grandmother in the garden, read, and created crafts. 2002 to 2010. Continued similar activities, but now I had my own computer. When it did not have internet, I mostly played The Sims and the Sierra Ancient City Building games. When it had internet, I talked to my friends on Microsoft Network Messenger, played Neopets, watched videos on YouTube, visited other gaming websites, and used Facebook. Story 40. We were not bored. We played outside, read books and comics. In my case, I was drawing and painting. Friends came over or you were there. We listened to the radio. Story 41. Some of my fondest memories as a child growing up in the 1990s are having sole access to the television in the living room, which was rare with three sisters, and channel surfing to find something worth watching. It was simple but really powerful. Story 42. Phone my friends on the landline. If they were not there, I would jump on my bike and ride to the Ball Diamond to play Scrub or 500. Sometimes I would try to jump over the old metal garbage cans like Evel Knievel. God forbid you fall and get road rash. Your mom would get out the iodine and a bandage. Story 43. There wasn't such a thing as boredom, and I am an only child. We would constantly be outside with friends and do activities, build houses out of rocks and branches, go to the shop with our pocket money, play games outside or sometimes video games, and gossip about school or other people. We also read books. Story 44. Tried to jump off a small hill with an umbrella repeatedly in the hopes of flying. Story 45. My parents were tricked into buying a Collier's Encyclopedia set in the late 1950s. I was born in 1952. I would pull a random volume out and just start reading. It took me until my mid-20s to realize that a lot of the information was completely biased. Story 46. Watched a music video on music television. Played on my Super Nintendo Entertainment System and Nintendo 64. Used the computer and hoped the phone line was available to get online. Story 47. You never admitted to or acted bored. Your parents would find something for you to do, usually unpaid manual labor. Story 48. What the kids in Stranger Things or did but without the monsters. We took our bikes and explored our region. We had abandoned buildings and caves, built a treehouse, played board games or video games, but mostly we played a game called Burglars and Police. Half the group was burglars who had to hide somewhere, and the other half was police who had to find the burglars, catch them, and guard them at a certain point so that they could not escape. We also played hide and seek or just sports. Story 49. Outside ride bikes, catch frogs, go to the park or the pool, play games like hide and seek, play baseball, climb trees, play on swings and monkey bars in each other's yards, roller skate on the driveway, build snowmen and snow forts, go sledding. Inside read, watch television, color and draw, play with Lego, make models, play with Barbies or dolls, play school, play video games, listen to music, play cards and board games, call friends on the phone, do crafts. Mom taught us to do embroidery and crochet, cook or bake, do chores, write stories, letters or diary entries, play ping pong or pool. Away from home, roller rink, mall, arcade, pizza or fast food, go shopping with a parent, library. We also did activities like scouts, sports, and dance, but not with the intensity they happen now. We went to camps and day camps, had random lessons like drawing. Once I was on a kid advisory group at the local newspaper. Parents were teachers. We hung out in their classrooms and sometimes helped them. We slept over at friends' houses. We were busy, but sometimes we were just bored. I missed that feeling. Story 50. We did not really get bored in the same way. My daughter can say, "I am bored" when we are at home. And I respond, "What? How is this my problem? You have a phone, a personal computer, a television, and a neighborhood. We have a deck of cards and plenty of board games. There are many solutions to what is bothering you. Pick one." Story 51. Played solitaire with an actual deck of cards. Eventually, I got really good at shuffling, which impressed my friends when we started playing poker in our teens. Story 52. Honestly, this is very sad. You have no idea what you have had taken from you. Story 53. Talk to our friends on the phone. Listened to records and actually heard the lyrics of the song. Rode bikes. Played outside. Watched television. Read books. When we turned 16, we would drive around and meet up at places we all knew, and we would drink cheap beer. We smoked weed. We planned to make the world a better place and worked on political campaigns. When I was in 5th grade, my dad, who worked for International Business Machines, took us to his job. It was a room filled with a big computer with punch cards that were put into the machine. My dad told me that someday I would have a computer that fit in my hand. I didn't believe him, and here I sit in my retirement with a computer in my hand. Story 54. Read books, comic books, played Nintendo and PlayStation. Story 55. I honestly cannot even remember. I think television was still a thing. Story 56. Being bored is greatly undervalued, especially for young people. It is the foundation of creativity. Story 57. Walk or bike, visit with friends, read a book, work on a project such as woodworking or model making, watch television, play video games, or my favorite, sleep. Story 58. Video games, ride bikes, skateboard, talk on the phone, and play outside. Story 59. We actually went outside and had fun. I grew up on a farm, so I had many things to do. Story 60. We were never bored. We were outside with friends all day. The 1970s were never boring. Story 61. I watched a lot of cable news network when it came out because it was the first alternative to daily soap operas and public broadcasting service. Story 62. I came up with something. It is called creativity. I only remember being really bored when I was a little kid. As a teenager, I always had something to do. I learned the guitar and could have played for 6 hours a day easily. Not every day, and it varied, but still, music is one. Story 63. Read a book, play outside, go for a run. Play with the kids in the neighborhood. Story 64. Books, collected Pogs, comics, baseball cards, stuffed magazine, Game Boy, hiking, mountain biking, being a mall rat, punk shows, photography, played board and card games, learned how to fix things for my grandfather and dad, started my own business shoveling snow and raking leaves with friends. Just talking to friends on the phone for hours, learning how to pirate music off the radio, program a video cassette recorder, find adult magazines in the woods. Story 65. Hang out with friends, build with Lego, read comics, draw, and play games like Uno and other games with my brother and parents. Story 66. Hang out with friends and figure out the most foolish things you could do, then convince that one fearless friend to do it. That's where I developed my skill in persuading my friends to try things they normally wouldn't. It is pretty easy, actually. Story 67. Boredom got pretty bad. We watched television, played video games, played with toys, and played outside with friends. There were definitely some very boring times. We had more hobbies back then. I built model muscle cars and used to draw pictures a lot. At least the music was good back then. Frequency modulation radio was awesome. Story 68. Hung out with friends, read books, played video games, watched TV, went outside, and explored. I sure miss those days. Story 69. Played outside with the neighborhood children. Played apartment complex-wide hide and seek or tag games. Rode bikes, scooters, and skateboards around the neighborhood. Spent a lot of time at the local playground and park. Then one of them got a brand new Xbox 360, and everyone started hanging out at that child's house, so that was the end of it. Story 70. Read a book, hang out with friends, go for a walk or bike ride, play my favorite albums for the 1000th time while studying the liner notes, draw a picture, daydream, talk to family, play a game. There is a great big world out there waiting to be enjoyed without being glued to your phone. Story 71. I was too bored then, and I am never bored now. I am 46. I spent downtime reading books or magazines, talking to the people around me, or just staring off into space and thinking, your generation would be a lot better off if you tried it. Story 72. Playing video games, board games, watching television, and movies. Story 73. The irony is, I never got bored without a smartphone. Honestly, there was always something to do. Exploring outside, going to the movies, hanging out with a friend, driving the strip. I could go on and on. Not being judgmental, I just think it was a better time. I grew up in the 1980s. Story 74. Constantly go to my friend's house. We'd play GoldenEye or Super Smash Bros. All the time. Ride our bikes all over the place. Go to the empty lot and look for cool sticks or climb trees. Go to the beach and find the best skipping rocks. Play kickball in the street. Jump on the trampoline and practice flipping. Come up with funny skits that we'd film on my parents' camcorder. Fly a kite, tie it to our bikes. Try to build and fail at a homemade go-kart. Build a snow fort in winter. Chase each other around with airsoft guns. Shoot hoops. Play hide and seek. I really miss those times. Story 75. I grew up without a television, so it was reading and more reading, as well as damming the local ditch, of course. Story 76. Pool when it was open during the summer. Bike. Walk over to a friend's house. Play on my Nintendo Entertainment System when I was bored and complete all levels on Super Mario Bros. 3. Story 77. We went out a lot, to fairs, parades, malls, and libraries. At home we read, played board games, watched television, rented films, played computer and video games, played with our toys, went to friends' houses and just hung out and talked. We listened to music. We were never bored. We did things to keep ourselves stimulated. Story 78. I got a smartphone when I was 14, so I am just talking about my life up until that point. My brother and I spent most of our childhood playing outside. We lived in a neighborhood full of kids, so we were never bored or without a playmate. On rainy days, we would play the PlayStation 3 inside or use the family's desktop computer. I liked Webkinz and Disney's games. There were also times I would just sit outside in the quiet and enjoy nature. I love books, so I read all the time. There were always things we could find to do. We were never really bored, especially because I had my brother. Now I find myself sitting inside or lying in bed more often because I am on my phone. I am not out experiencing or exploring nearly as much as I used to. Story 79. I read a physical book or watched television on all 5 channels. Story 80. When I was a kid, I just made up games. If I was walking a mile to my friend's house, I'd act like I was fighting my way through the Ardennes. If I was at home, I might be a ninja or a wizard. Imagination and household objects. When I became a teenager, it was smoking cigarettes and listening to music on my portable cassette player. I had a lot of cassettes which were just recorded off the radio. I wrote the call letters on the label. I would dedicate one cassette to the college station, another to the rock station, and so on. Also, my high school had a smoking area. Story 81. I was rarely home, almost always out. We were always involved in something. Story 82. Early childhood. Read a book, play with toys, dork around with friends in the yard, watch cartoons, make art. I remember being bored mostly on long car rides in church at adult events. Middle childhood. Read a book, go to the playground, dork around with friends in the neighborhood, ride bikes, go swimming or ice skating, watch television, do a puzzle, do homework. I do not remember being bored. Teens. Read a book, do homework, talk on the phone, go to a friend's house, cook or bake, watch television, babysit for cash, ride a bike to the mall, play with fashion, clothes, and makeup, go to the movies, go to the record store, go to bookstores, play tabletop games, play music with friends. Young adult, read a book, get a second job or do work for my primary job, take a class and do homework, cook or bake, hang with friends, go skiing, take day trips, go shopping, decorate my apartment, play with pets, spend excessive amounts of time on hobbies, go to bars, sports events, concerts, or parties to meet other singles, host parties or watch events at home, watch television or movies on cable or video cassette recorder. Story 83. Exploring the woods, basic experiments, dad's books, and lots of board time. Story 84. I grew up in rural areas playing hide and seek, building tree houses or small tents and log cabins, bicycling to the dung and bin diving, exploring World War II remains, making firecrackers from toy gun shots and matches, and having campfires with baked potatoes. Lots of good memories. Story 85. Read, play board games, put different kinds of bugs in a Coke bottle and watch them interact. Ride bikes, play capture the flag, play sports, go to the library, study, write, draw, color, play chess, play with the magnets in the junk drawer, play office, make a family newsletter, play with the neighbors, walk the family dog, help prepare dinner, and assist with household chores. Story 86. Books, in real-life friends, drugs, sex, country drives, slow internet activities, board games, instruments. Story 87. I grew up with a supermarket dictionary and encyclopedia set. Those and teachers were my best friends. I did not socialize with my peers. They were all beneath me. I became obsessed with the origin of words and how English evolved from Englisk, then Norman, then English. I often appeal to etymology and dispute improper professional or standard terms in diction. Because of this, I was indefinitely blocked from Wikipedia for making unfounded claims about black holes in the subjunctive instead of the indicative mood. The significant amount of time I spent on Wikipedia, Wiktionary, and dictionaries from around 2014 onward kept me from boredom. During that time, I also examined standard interpretations of scientific concepts, applied proper diction and relations, identified loopholes in thermodynamic laws, concluded that black holes and radiation pressure do not exist, determined the weak interaction is not elementary, and found that the field and body are identical. I read the Old and New Testaments in their original languages and Strong's Concordance to verify whether claims from mistranslations millennia later were valid. I kept my own notes of passages I found contradictory with other passages. Translations and context did not help, and commentaries and sermons often ignore both. My unique understanding of everything has helped my comments settle hundreds of threads and challenged many false beliefs. Story 88. Played outside. I worked a delivery job for years, and I always say it is strange how there are no children playing outside in neighborhoods anymore. We were always outside and you could not keep us in. The street lights were our boss. Story 89. Went outside and explored with friends. We had a plan at school that day about when and where to meet. People never canceled unless they got home and were grounded for something like not making their bed. Story 90. Play outside and read. We were not even allowed inside the house during the summer. Story 91. Read, ride my bicycle, play outside with neighborhood friends, play with my toys, read more books. Story 92. As a child, I played outside. As a teenager, I hung out with friends and went to a lot of live shows. Even when mobile phones were just starting to come out, as a young adult we would go to a pub or bar to dance. Mobile phones were still mainly used for calling people while on the go. Story 93. Fighting over the one phone in the household with my siblings. This led to fighting to get someone off the phone so we could use our dial-up internet. Story 94. I don't remember ever getting bored. We would find something to do, either physically or mentally. Story 95. We played outside with our friends. We played the ColecoVision console and would run to the bathroom during commercial breaks. Story 96. Go outside. Ride bikes. Look for dead animals at the river. Story 97. I do not remember being very bored before smartphones were invented. It felt like a different dimension from the one we are living in now. Story 98. 1. Played outside with neighborhood children and friends. 2. Extracurricular activities like swimming team, track and field, and cheerleading. 3. Played board games with family members. 4. Watched age-appropriate movies. I have always loved animal documentaries. I cannot stress enough that older millennials are the last generation to truly play outside with minimal parental supervision. We made up games, rode bikes far away, and returned home by the time the streetlights came on. That was a real thing. We spent quality time with people our age. Story 99. Human activities included reading, gardening, washing the car, doing random chores, calling friends in person, hanging out and chatting, playing video games, watching movies and television, and doing crafts. The world was a great place until 2012. Then it all started to spiral fast. Story 100. I grew up before video games and smartphones. We watched television, played board games, read books, did puzzles, and listened to music. We also played outside because we could be out for hours. We went to each other's houses, to the park, played baseball and basketball, swam at the municipal pool, and of course we hung out at the street corner. It is a shame that parents today would get arrested for giving their children the freedom that we had. Story 101. Made radio shows with a tape recorder. Then wondered why my voice sounded that way. Story 102. Go outside. Be friends with the local children. Read books. Play with toys like actual good toys. Watch VHS movies. Use your imagination. Story 103. I was never bored. Probably because the minute I got home from school, I took my clothes off, put on shorts, and went outside until supper time. Story 104. Read, watch television, ride bicycles, go to the pool, hang out with friends, listen to music, do crafts. Story 105. Read books. Listen to music. Listen to music while reading books. Story 106. I was never bored. I played basketball, played guitar, hiked, read books, and spent time with friends. Story 107. Life was so much better. We actually talked, played cards, and left our homes to play with friends. We visited extended families, learned how to cook from grandma, helped with house chores, and waited for the time to watch that one show on television. If you were not there on time, you missed the episode. Something was magical about those times. Story 108. Friends, we rode our bicycles to the basketball courts and played basketball. We also rode our bicycles to the mall and the beach. Honestly, bicycles were the most important thing in our lives back then, and we were never bored. Story 109. Ride bikes, build forts, play flag football with the neighborhood kids, play board games, play war, card games, bury treasures in the backyard, play soccer, rollerblade, go to the arcade, sneak out at night and smoke cigarettes, do drugs, and more. Story 110. We were never bored. We went outside and came home when it was dark. Story 111. Capture the flag, manhunt, rode my bike, played video games, went to the mall with friends. Story 112. Bored? Cannot say I was ever bored. We knew how to fill our time. Story 113. I drew pictures in my notebook, read children's magazines, watched television, and played outside with my brother using sticks. Story 114. I had many favorite magazines. They were the internet of my youth. Mad Magazine, Popular Science, Modern Photography, Modern Cinematography, Car and Driver, Spy. Listening to records and roaming around the neighborhood with my friends. Reading the unabridged dictionary and encyclopedias. Tinkering with electronics in my room. I was never bored. I honestly did not know what kids were talking about when they said they were bored. Took me a while to realize that was not normal. Story 115. We found sticks. Nice sticks. Long sticks. Weird sticks. We just did silly things outside until sunset. Story 116. I read. I was a voracious reader, and I hate what the smartphone has done to my brain. Story 117. If I complained about being bored, people would likely say, you could always do chores X, Y, and Z. So, I learned to get creative. Story 118. Read a motherfucking book. Actually, I used to write simple poems, memorize other people's poems, listen to music and write out the lyrics, write letters, walk everywhere, and sometimes sit content with my own thoughts. My husband can still do this. I can't. I'm jealous. Story 119. I rode my bike, roller skated, ice skated, took dance classes, swam at a pool in the summer, read books, and listened to music. Going to the roller rink on the weekend in middle school was a big deal. We all waste too much time on the internet and phones now. It was a totally different life back then. Story 120. Listen to music, read books and magazines, watch television, and talk to friends on the landline for hours. Story 121. Went to movies, talked to people in person or on the phone, went to parties, read a book, listened to music, played video games, wrote stories, drew pictures, and spent some time thinking. Story 122. The summer schedule was as follows. Went out in the morning after breakfast and collected a few neighborhood friends. Checked in for lunch and went back outside again. When the streetlights came on, we were all back in our own yards. Story 123. Played outside a lot. Rode bicycles everywhere. Went for runs. Just much more fresh air. Story 124. Something, anything, and nothing. Sometimes even all at the same time. Story 125. Stared at the ceiling and focused and unfocused my eyes for hours at a time. You know the usual. Story 126. Open a window, light a candle, play some records, and paint. Story 127. Read, create, go outside, and raise hell. Now I just sit on my couch and go from laughing to being annoyed to being incredulous as I scroll through bad news for hours. Story 128. I do not remember getting bored that much, which is strange because I definitely get bored now. Story 129. We went outside or drove to a friend's house to hang out. We played music and ran around. It was awesome. Story 130. Books, television, outside activities, video games. Called people on the traditional landline telephone. Story 131. From 1980 to 1995, we still had video games, television, phone, and spent time with our friends. Our parents would still load us into a cannon and send us outside. Story 132. I would go for a walk, hang out with friends. Everyone was in pretty good shape back then. Story 133. Played the same games on Game Boy repeatedly. Watched the same cartoons on VHS repeatedly. Read the same books repeatedly. On the plus side, I knew those media really well. Now I am always watching something new, so I rarely remember the plot of a movie I saw a year ago. Story 134. Depends on the decade. In the 1980s, I watched cartoons, played with my G.I. Joes, and played with friends. I played on the Atari 2600. In the late 1980s, it was mostly the same, but I got a Nintendo in 1987. In the early 1990s, it was the same for the most part, but I got a Sega Genesis. I watched MTV, read books, cut grass, and went to the mall. In the mid to late 1990s, I worked, played high school sports, spent time with my girlfriend, and broke up with her. In 1999, I worked and went to school. I met my wife. From 2000 to 2004, I had my first child, bought a house, and joined the military. I am still married and sold the house when I joined the military. By 2004, I had my first smartphone. In 1997 or 1998, I had my first cell phone. Story 135. Went outside and played with friends and siblings, read books and magazines, watched television, played on the computer, and did crafts. Story 136. Laid on the floor in the hallway and talked on the landline until someone picked up the phone and told us they needed to use it. Then we would go read a magazine or go outside. Story 137. Watch television, use the computer, read, ride my bicycle, hang out with friends at the park or mall, talk on the home telephone, play video games, listen to tapes, compact discs or radio, and draw. Story 138. Reading comics, playing with my toys, roaming outside looking for interesting bugs, climbing trees, playing on the playground, riding my bike, skateboarding, roller skating, swimming. Story 139. You would sometimes just be bored. Shockingly, it is an okay way to be. Story 140. Rode bikes into the next city or town, climbed trees, played pickup baseball or football, went roller skating or bowling, Built forts in the woods. If it was raining, watched television or read Mad magazine. On Saturdays, there was a theater that ran old horror movies and Bruce Lee movies. You could watch all day for $1. This was a great deal for parents. Story 141. Tried to tow my sibling behind my bicycle while they were riding a skateboard. Made several attempts to ride my bicycle backward, including one attempt going downhill. Story 142. Rode bikes, fished for crayfish, played at the park, Super Nintendo, listened to my boombox, and read a lot. Story 143. Played outside, climbed trees, got friends together, and just roamed. Sometimes we would walk miles away from home, visiting other friends at random to see what they were doing. Those unexpected visits were exciting. We would get our video games together and visit friends for trades, then go home with new games to play. After a few days, we would trade back. We would gather a big group for a water balloon fight or play kickball. Life as a kid was like an adventure, and every day was a new memory. Story 144. Made mixtapes from the radio and pretended to host a show between the songs. Story 145. Boredom is good for you. Boredom leads to thinking creatively. Boredom leads to creativity. And there is nothing as satisfying as making something yourself. It is better than anything else to do. Story 146. I read a lot. It was intense. I listened to the radio often. I taught myself to play the guitar. Story 147. Watch television, like actually watching, not scrolling and only half paying attention. Story 148. Read a book, played games, talked face to face with friends, or were just bored. That is the problem. People think now that you have to be engaged every waking minute in doing something. No, you have to learn how to be bored and deal with it. Story 149. We had things called bicycles, and believe it or not, my friends and I would ride them. Story 150. Bored? Boredom is good for the brain, actually. But who has time to be bored? We were busy running through fields, putting on shows for the cows, building forts, playing office or school, digging holes, playing with matchbox cars, and climbing trees. And if you neared the house, the lawn needed mowing, the dishwasher unloaded, you had to give your baby sister a bath, set the table, and cut vegetables. Story 151. Board games, video games, television, meet up with friends, play outside and explore. Story 152. What an absolutely depressing question. This is awful, honestly. Story 153. I was never bored. I spent a lot of time outside hiking, bike riding, or hanging out with friends. Inside, I would read, play games, listen to music, draw, paint, create, write, and use my brain. Story 154. Went swimming, played dress up with my pets, rode my bike, spent time at friends' houses, and went roller skating. Read a lot. Story 155. Played outside and made up adventures, read books, played board games, used toys, made forts, climbed trees, and caught lizards, bugs, and toads. Story 156. Killing time at home. Play computer games or Nintendo Entertainment System, Super Nintendo Entertainment System, or PlayStation. Read, watch the same movies, listen to the same CDs repeatedly, talk on the phone, or talk to a sibling. Killing time away from home while waiting for something or someone. Mostly reading books, sometimes listening to a portable cassette player or portable CD player. Killing large amounts of time, from hours to a whole day. Go to the library, go to the mall, and randomly walk around or stop to say hi to people I knew who worked there, walk on a nature trail, go to the movies, or visit flea markets and antique stores. 1980s and 1990s, small city. Story 157. Video games, rode my bicycle somewhere, went to swim club if it was summer, drew pictures of crazy characters. Story 158. Read books, play outside, spend time with friends. Repeat. Story 159. Went outdoors, read books, called friends, tried new recipes, played with pets, went to arts and crafts classes, mowed the lawn, did home repair and do-it-yourself projects, took day trips, walked on the beach, sat with our thoughts, journaled. We lived. Story 160. I played outside all day. I like to climb trees, run, and play traditional games with friends. Story 161. I got a lot of exercise riding my bicycle and walking everywhere. I hung out with friends, listened to music while reading the lyric sheet and looking at the artwork. I played many games of Uno and other board games, watched television, and read books. I actually had a set of encyclopedias in my room and would spend hours reading through them, learning all kinds of things. Story 162. Built go-karts, fishing, hunting, camping, tree houses, bike riding, working out, running, jogging, push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, cooking, cleaning, mending, riding horses, taking care of horses, playing with dog, taking care of dog, playing with friends, playing with siblings, reading at the library, hanging out at the airport, volunteering at the airport, roller skating, built model airplanes, flew model airplanes, built tennis ball cannons, made boomerangs out of wood, made fishing poles out of bamboo, made worm farms, sold bamboo poles and worms, made boats, painted boats, repaired boats, worked on cars, rebuilt cars, read the Sunday newspaper cover to cover, read the encyclopedia, read an entire author's works for extra credit, tutored siblings, tutored friends, gardening, learning a new skill like knife sharpening, cut firewood, stacked firewood, made leather projects, reloaded ammunition, made ammunition, water skiing, swimming at the swimming hole, made nails, milled lumber, the usual activities. Story 163. If you were in one of those moods where nothing is interesting, even if you had access to it, you would just stare at the wall or ceiling and complain. Eventually, the imagination would take over. Story 164. Depending on my age, I spent a lot of time outside, playing with friends, and watching television. When I got older, I loved going on drives, walking on the beach, exploring the small downtown area near my house, visiting Barnes and Noble, painting, and listening to music. Story 165. Read a book, watched a movie, played video games, and did arts and crafts. Story 166. Books, playing sports, spending time in nature, television, video games. Story 167. Read many books. Played on my Atari 2600. Then later the Atari 800. Drew a lot. Story 168. Sometimes I went into the kitchen and called a friend to see if he wanted to hang out, play catch, go ride our bikes or whatever. Back in the dark ages before the internet and before cell phones, we actually talked to people. Story 169. Used a landline telephone to call friends and make prank calls. Watch television. Read Reader's Digest and 17 magazine. Story 170. I had tropical fish tanks that were interesting. I cleaned at a movie theater, went to all the movies, rode a small dirt bike in sand dunes, and snowmobiled in winter. We built tree forts in the back of our house and other friends' houses. We watched a bit of TV, made mixtapes, and played card games and board games. My dad took me fishing early on a Saturday morning, and we ate Turkish Delights chocolate bars for breakfast. While out in the bush, we would stop at a creek to pan for gold and look for rocks, specifically agates and jades. I learned to shoot a .22 rifle and a 12-gauge shotgun. At the end of each school year, we participated in the walkathon, 29 kilometers, to raise money for people who needed help. My mom knew who I was with but not what I was up to. Thanks for asking and sending me down memory lane. Story 171. Went outside, took long walks and bike rides, played in the woods, read many books, spent time at the library, fished at the lake or river, had backyard boxing matches, tinkered in the garage. I feel sad for children who did not get to experience this and grew up entertaining themselves with smartphones and electronics. Story 172. I mostly got into trouble when I got caught. Otherwise, I created many charcoal art pieces on canvas, clay sculptures, wrote poetry, and built odd machines from discarded small engines and electric machinery. Story 173. Read, write, draw, paint, learn, exercise, sleep. Now I am worried for the younger generation if this is a genuine question. Story 174. Honestly, I don't remember. I feel like I was better with time management, though. Having the internet at my fingertips 24 hours a day, 7 days a week cannot be healthy. Story 175. I talked on the phone so much, I even had my own phone line. I listened to so much music and read so many books. I watched television, hung out with my family and friends. I miss it. Story 176. I went across the street and played with my friend. I looked up things I was interested in, played computer games, read a book, listened to music, played with toys, rode my bike, or played in the nearby river. Before my state entered a permanent drought, I also played in the rain and went sledding. We have not had proper weather since 2012, so I cannot do any outdoor activities for fear of bursting into flames like a vampire. Story 177. Went to the library, malls, watched television, called friends, did woodworking, and played the synthesizer. Same as now. Story 178. Some days I lie down on the couch watching episodes of cartoons I have seen 1,000 times before. Other days, if my friends are home, we play outside and get into trouble. One time, we broke into an old military site. We did not know it was not as abandoned as we thought. Story 179. I carried a book with me everywhere. I often carried two just in case I finished one. Story 180. Made up games with my friends, went down to the creek or into the nearby woods and explored. Rode my bike all over the neighborhood without using my hands, went to the library, hit a tennis ball against the house, made and built a clubhouse. Story 181. Went outside, knocked on friends' doors, looked for crawfish in a stream, dressed up or played with Barbies. I loved the Barbie head. Story 182. Watched G.I. Joe and Thundercats and played Mario or Sonic. Story 183. Rode my bike with my friends, played disc operating system games, Nintendo, arcades, read books, watched movies, listened to my tapes, eventually compact discs, and much more. Story 184. I read a lot. I have noticed a downward trend in my reading comprehension over the last 10 to 15 years. Story 185. You found something to do. Learned quickly. Do not ever tell your mom that you are bored unless you like cleaning out your closet, garage, and so on. Story 186. Built forts, saw friends, exercised, read, solved puzzles, watched television, played with my dog, and tried a new recipe. Story 187. Read a lot. We also read shampoo bottles on the toilet. Reader's Digest was literally only in business for toilet reading. We also got into many shenanigans on bikes and around the neighborhood. It was quite a time. Story 188. Put a stack of vinyl records on the player and listened to hours of music as they played one by one. Taught myself to draw, read books and magazines. Rode my bike around the neighborhood until I found a friend to hang out with. Created clubs in the woods. That lasted all day. Watched Saturday morning cartoons and primetime shows at night. Homework. Boo. Swam at the local pool during the summer. Got my first job at the age of 12, working Sundays at the local Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Story 189. Read the ingredients of the shampoo bottle, toothpaste, and other products when sitting bored on the toilet. Story 190. Two different questions. We did not know what a starting point was, so it was not missed. A bored person is a boring person. Mrs. Lacombe, my 7th grade civics teacher, Webster Groves Public Schools, Hickson Junior High, St. Louis County, Missouri, 1963. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.